This episode is sponsored by Dice Dungeons. Check out their Kickstarter using the link in the description below. Hello everybody, Jordan here. The PH is silent. Let's talk about Evermeet. I figure Evermeet has more to do in the Forgotten Realms novels than game material, but early TSR days, those always seem to go together. However, I did find a role-playing supplement, so for the majority of this video, I'm pulling from the Elves of Evermeet for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Let's explore the Isle of the Elves, Evermeet. Evermeet was created by the Elves during the event known as the First Sundering, or at the time, just known as the Sundering. It was a high magic ritual cast by the greatest elven mages around negative 17,600 DR. A young wild elf named Starleaf walked to the center of the ritual surrounded by elven high mages. They started a magical song that unleashed the power of the weave, channeling it through their bodies. It was so strong it pulled their souls, their life force from their body and added it to the spell. The consequence of this spell, there were earthquakes and floods, but it was successful in creating a new island that formed in the trackless sea. Starleaf was the only elf who was part of the ritual to survive. She went unconscious during the casting and awoke on the island of Evermeet itself. The elven deities Corellon and Angarath were present on the island too, and revealed that the island was created in part by their blessing. The gods aided the elves in creating Evermeet, but in this knowledge, the gods were also responsible for the destruction to Faerun during its creation. Evermeet was to be a place for all the good elves of Faerun. Thought to be a piece of Arvindor, which is a realm in the first layer of Aboria, Arvindor was home to the Seldarin, the elven pantheon. It was a little slice of elvish afterlife. Because of the events of Corellon and Lolth and the divide between elven kind, no elf would ever fully return to Corellon's embrace to enjoy life eternal in Arvindor. Perhaps Evermeet was his way of showing love or pity to the mortal elves of Faerun, the closest piece of heaven they could get. Perhaps the elves will be reborn as fey creatures eventually and allowed to return to Arvindor, but not today. Evermeet, also known as the Green Isle, is the last true kingdom of the elves and the final destination for all non-drow elves. Very few non-elves have been permitted to visit, and they rarely are allowed to stay. For many, many years, Evermeet was a myth, or at least to non-elves. With magical protections of illusionary magic, ships getting lost looking for it, or getting attacked by the Sea Elf Navy to keep Evermeet secure and secret, it was difficult to find. There are other magical defenses around Evermeet. Only the most daring ships crewed by the most skillful sailors can hope to sail within sight of the Green Isle. There are illusionary islands and water hazards around Evermeet. Also, the entire island is invisible to non-elven eyes. This magic was instilled in part by the elven deities to protect this home for the elves. There are also defensive storms around the island, winds, currents that will automatically carry a vessel away or around the island. If you can somehow make it through the illusions and the winds, there comes the cyclones. Numerous water spouts will form to surround the intruding ship. Difficult sailing checks must be made to successfully navigate this magic. Then there are physical reefs that can destroy a ship very quickly. Only the safe course is known to the elves, and without detailed knowledge of the reefs, your journey will be an unfortunate one. Finally, if a ship manages to get past all of that, the Queen of Evermeet has the power to teleport any ship that comes within 5 miles of Evermeet 20d20 miles in a random direction. This ability was granted to her by Corellon and has limited use, but is very effective. Plus, there are a variety of large sea monsters that are magically compelled to patrol the surrounding waters. You might have a brief fight with a kraken before coming into port at Evermeet. Evermeet also has a navy and ships aplenty, and they also have a squadron of sea elves that live beneath the waves. They'll occasionally help the navy by attacking ships from underneath, but their primary duty is to keep aquatic threats away from Evermeet, Sahagin and evil scrags within the ocean that might assault the island. And there is an aerial army of elven mounted pegasi and eagle riders. Also, there are 12 slumbering dragons within Evermeet that can be called upon and ridden. The dragon riders are to be used only in dire situations against a powerful force to defeat a powerful enemy. Other Sylvan races inhabit Evermeet. The fairy folk from the Feywild have found a happy home on the Green Isle. Centaurs, fairy dragons, pixies, sprites, unicorns, nymphs, and treants. I'm sure you could incorporate other fey creatures who have taken up residence on Evermeet. It's an ideal home away from the Feywild. Most of the cities, the buildings, and structures of Evermeet were built with magic. There's a spell called Construction that transforms raw materials, stone, crystal, wood, into sculptures, shelters, buildings, or even great palaces. defenses. They're much stronger than if crafted normally and can withstand being besieged or attacked quite well. Might be a fun spell for your wizard to learn from the elves while on their Evermeet tourist adventure. I'd like to thank Dice Dungeons for being today's video sponsor. They've got a Kickstarter going on for character coins, battle grid sized 1-inch coins that can represent PCs and NPCs in your game. They are reversible with a broken shield or a torn magic book to represent a fallen character. The Kickstarter has broken many of its stretch goals, including a dice bag included at no additional cost, and 3 new sets of coins, zombies, skeletons, and 2-inch large dragon coins. Check out their Kickstarter today, link in the description below. Prior to the spell plague, Evermeet was ruled by Queen Amla Ruil, also known as the Sad Queen. She is sad because of the death of her king. Her sorrow doesn't seem to end. Despite her mourning, she continued to rule her people just and wise. The spell plague pushed Evermeet into the Feywild, where it now resides. There is an island still in the Trackless Sea, but the people, cities, and creatures of Evermeet now reside in the Feywild. The Evermeet Fey can step back and forth between the Prime Material Plane Island and the Feywild as they choose. Certain contact points between Faerun and Evermeet still exist on the island. If an adventurer found their way there, they might stumble into the Feywild Evermeet. I couldn't find much information on what happened to Queen Amla Ruil. I assume she died during the spell plague. Her royal council now rules Evermeet. Perhaps you have an all-elf party and their final goal after years of adventuring is to join the elves of Evermeet. This could be a wonderful seafaring adventure, perhaps locating maps to Evermeet and getting past all the hazards that prevent non-elves from locating it. The journey would certainly be a memorable one. Thanks for watching, everyone. Special thanks to my patrons on Patreon that keep these videos going. I will see you next time with another episode of Forgotten Realms Explained.